7 days ago, a man stood in the streets of Tehran, surrounded by crowds, looked directly into a television camera, and sent a personal warning to the President of the United States. His name was Ali Larijani. He said, word for word, watch out for yourself, lest you be eliminated. Today, March 17th, 2026, day 18 of the US-Israel war on Iran, Ali Larijani is dead. Israel killed him overnight. And here is the part that will stay with you long after this video ends. Larijani was not just another official. He was not just another name on a kill list. For the last 18 days, since Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed on February 28th, Ali Larijani was the man actually running Iran. He was the one making the decisions. He was the one managing the war. He was the one telling Trump to watch out for himself. And this morning, he is gone. In the next 15 minutes, I am going to show you exactly who Ali Larijani was, why his death changes this war in ways that most people are not yet discussing, what the IDF killed alongside him last night, why Iran's new Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei is wounded and hiding and may not actually be in charge of anything, and what happens to a country when it loses its #1 and #2 leader in the same 18 days. This is not speculation. I have been going through the original source documents, the New York Times, Jerusalem Post, CNBC, Reuters, Al Jazeera, and the IDF's own official statements. Every single claim in this video comes from verified reporting published in the last few hours. Stay with me, because this story is bigger than the headline. Before we go deeper, subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications, because this war is moving faster than any news cycle I have ever tracked. Every hour, something changes. And when the next major development breaks, whether it is Mojtaba Khamenei finally appearing in public, or Iran retaliating for Larijani's killing, or the Strait of Hormuz situation exploding, you will want to see the analysis here before anywhere else. Hit subscribe, notifications on, let's go. Part 1. Who was Ali Larijani? To understand why his death matters, you need to understand who he actually was. Most Western news coverage described Larijani as Iran's security chief. That is technically accurate, but it massively undersells what he represented. Ali Larijani was 67 years old. He was the son of one of Iran's most powerful religious families. His father was a senior Ayatollah. His brother is a former head of Iran's judiciary. This was not a man who climbed into power. He was born into the center of it. He served for 12 years as the Speaker of Iran's parliament, the longest anyone has ever held that position. Think about what that means. 12 years at the top of Iran's legislative body. A man who outlasted every political shift, every internal power struggle, every factional battle inside the Islamic Republic, and remained standing. He was the person who, in 2021, negotiated Iran's 25-year comprehensive strategic partnership with China. A deal worth hundreds of billions of dollars that was specifically designed to keep Iran's economy alive under Western sanctions. When Iran needed money, when Iran needed a lifeline against American pressure, Larijani was the man who flew to Beijing and made it happen. He was the key liaison between Iran and Russia, maintaining the relationship that has supplied both countries with military technology and strategic intelligence during the conflict. When Iran needed to coordinate targeting information or weapons transfers, Larijani managed that relationship. He was also the man who oversaw the violent suppression of Iran's domestic protests, the demonstrations that erupted across the country calling for the end of Islamic rule. The U.S. Treasury Department sanctioned him specifically because, in their words, he was one of the first Iranian leaders to call for violence in response to the legitimate demands of the Iranian people. He coordinated the crackdown on behalf of the Supreme Leader. He deployed the besieged forces. He directed the arrests, the shootings, the disappearances. And he was the man who oversaw Iran's nuclear negotiations with the United States, the back-channel conversations that were happening even as both sides prepared for war. This is the person Israel killed last night. But here is the part that changes the analysis entirely. Part 2. He was not just security chief. He was running the war. Since February 28th, since the U.S.-Israeli strikes killed Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei on day 1, Ali Larijani was operating as the de facto leader of Iran. That is not an exaggeration. That is the assessment of multiple intelligence agencies confirmed by the Jerusalem Post reporting on Tuesday. The IDF itself described Larijani in its official statement as the de facto leader of the Iranian terror regime. Not an official, not a commander. The de facto leader, here is why. Mojtaba Khamenei was technically selected as the new supreme leader on March 8th by Iran's Assembly of Experts. But as I covered in detail last week, Mojtaba Khamenei was wounded in the same strike that killed his father on February 28th. He has not made a single public appearance in the 18 days since. He has not given a speech. He has not released a video. He did not even attend his own succession rally where supporters stood in crowds holding his photograph. Multiple intelligence sources, American and Israeli, confirm he has a fractured foot and is hiding at a secure location. Reuters reported last week, citing 5 senior Iranian sources, that the IRGC forced through his selection by threatening clerics who opposed it. The Jerusalem Post reported Tuesday that given Mojtaba's total absence from public life, Larijani was the one actually running Iran's day-to-day war strategy. He announced on March 1st that he would head an interim committee to manage the country following Khamenei's death. He was the public face of Iran's defiance. He was the one appearing on television, at rallies, issuing statements, managing alliances. When Iran needed a voice, when Iran needed someone to tell Trump to back down, to coordinate with China and Russia, to signal to regional actors what Iran's intentions were, that person was Larijani. Now he is gone. Part 3, the last 7 days, what he said, what he did. This is the detail that makes this story impossible to look away from. On March 10th, after Trump threatened to escalate the U.S. military campaign against Iran, Larijani posted publicly, "Iran does not fear your paper threats. Even those greater than you could not eliminate the Iranian nation. Watch out for yourself, lest you be eliminated." He posted that on March 10th. On March 13th, 4 days ago, Larijani walked through the streets of Tehran at the Quds Day rally. He took selfies with passersby. He did a live television interview. He told the interviewer about Operation Epic Fury. It's clear they're running out of steam. Trump's problem is that he doesn't understand that the Iranian nation is mature and determined. On Friday, March 13th, the U.S. State Department's Rewards for Justice program placed a $10 million bounty on his head. Identifying him as one of 10 Iranian officials the U.S. was specifically targeting. Larijani's response? He quoted a Shia Islamic martyr and said, "I do not see death as anything but happiness, nor life with the oppressors as anything but torment." On Sunday, March 16th, he responded to that bounty by posting again, "Iran does not fear your paper threats." His last known public communication was a handwritten note published on his social media on Tuesday morning, hours after the strike, commemorating Iranian sailors who had been killed. It was posted either by him before the strike or by his team after it. Iran has not confirmed the death, but Israel has. Multiple sources have. The man who told Trump he would be eliminated was himself eliminated 4 days after standing in the streets of Tehran. 1 week after threatening the U.S. president, 18 days into a war that has now claimed the top 2 leaders of the Islamic Republic. Part 4, what else Israel killed last night? Larijani was not the only target. In the same overnight operation, the IDF confirmed it killed General Gholam Reza Soleimani, the commander of Iran's Basij paramilitary forces. Along with his deputy, Sayed Qureshi, the Basij is not a conventional military unit. It is the IRGC's internal enforcement arm. It is the force that was deployed to crush the domestic protests inside Iran. It is the force that carried out mass arrests, that killed protesters in the streets, that ran the detention centers. Gholam Reza Soleimani was the man in command of all of that. The IDF wrote in its official statement, amid the internal protests in Iran, and particularly in recent times with their escalation, the Basij forces under Soleimani's command led key suppression operations involving severe violence, widespread arrests, and the use of force against civilian protesters. He was killed in a makeshift tent area, not at a known headquarters, which tells you something important about how Israel's intelligence is operating. Iran's top officials are no longer staying in known locations. They are moving constantly, using improvised shelters, trying to hide, and Israel is finding them anyway. The IDF also announced it killed the IRGC's aerospace force chief overnight. And according to an Israeli official speaking to the Jerusalem Post, the majority of the besieged leadership was eliminated in the same operation. In a single night, overnight on March 16th to 17, Israel killed the man running Iran's day-to-day war, the commander of Iran's internal paramilitary suppression forces, his deputy, the IRGC's aerospace chief, and most of the besieged senior leadership. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said in a statement, Larijani and the besieged commander were eliminated last night and have joined Khamenei, the head of the Annihilation Program, along with all those eliminated from the axis of evil in the depths of hell. Netanyahu's office published a photograph of Netanyahu on a phone call with the caption stating he had ordered the elimination of senior Iranian regime officials. The Mossad's Farsi language account posted on X, "In the end, people without mercy will die." What this means for Iran's leadership, now we have to ask the question that changes the strategic picture entirely. Who is actually running Iran right now? Let me lay out what we know. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader for 37 years, was killed on day one, February 28th. Mojtaba Khamenei was appointed his successor on March 8th, but he is wounded in hiding and has made no public appearance in 18 days. Ali Larijani, the de facto operational leader of Iran for the last 18 days, was killed last night. The Basij commander and his deputy killed last night. The IRGC aerospace chief killed last night. Iran's original military chief, IRGC chief, and defense minister all killed on February 28th, along with approximately 40 other top officials. The Jerusalem Post reporting identifies three possible remaining figures of authority. First, Ahmad Vahidi, the IRGC's new commander, announced on March 1st, Vahidi was not a top 10 figure before the war. He was the IRGC deputy chief, having previously served as interior minister from 2021 to 2024 and defense minister from 2009 to 2013. He's been an IRGC commander since the late 1980s. He is experienced but relatively unknown publicly. Second, President Masoud Pezeshkian, who has made public statements but is viewed by analysts as too weak in his influence over the IRGC to be in effective control. Third, Mojtaba Khamenei himself, if he is healthy enough and if he actually has authority over the IRGC. The reality is this: Iran has now lost so many of its most experienced leaders in such a short period of time that the question of who is genuinely in control, who has the authority, the institutional knowledge, and the respect to make binding strategic decisions is genuinely unclear. And that is not a comfortable situation for anyone. Part 6. The wider war today. While this assassination is the headline story, the war itself continued escalating on every front. Iran hit the UAE again. Abu Dhabi was forced to suspend operations at the Shah gas field, one of the most important gas production facilities in the Middle East, after a drone strike ignited a fire there. The Shah gas field has a production capacity of 1.28 billion standard cubic feet per day. It is not a marginal asset. It is a critical piece of the Gulf's energy infrastructure. Iran also struck the Fujairah oil industry zone, which has a commercial storage capacity of approximately 70 million barrels of refined petroleum products. Fujairah matters enormously right now because it is one of the very few bypass routes that exists around the Strait of Hormuz. Ships have been trying to use Fujairah as an alternative to avoid the Hormuz closure. Iran is now targeting Fujairah specifically to close off that alternative. The Strait of Hormuz itself remains effectively closed. This is day 18 of the closure. According to Windward Maritime Intelligence, there have been 0 confirmed tanker crossings in either direction. The closure that began with Iran's declaration on March 2nd has now lasted long enough that economists are no longer debating whether it will cause a recession. They are debating how severe that recession will be. Israel launched new strikes on Tehran and 3 neighborhoods in Beirut overnight, in addition to the leadership eliminations. And the U.S. embassy in Baghdad was, again, targeted by drone attacks, the most intense such attack of the conflict so far, carried out by Iran-backed groups operating in Iraq. Part 7, Trump, NATO, and the fracture nobody expected here is the story running parallel to the military escalation that it is getting. Trump asked NATO allies to send warships to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He called on China, on Europe, on anyone willing to help police the waterway. He made the request public. He applied pressure. He warned allies that there would be consequences for refusing. Every major European power said no. Germany's defense minister, Boris Pistorius, said publicly, "What does Donald Trump expect a handful of European frigates to do in the Strait of Hormuz that the powerful U.S. Navy cannot do? This is not our war. We have not started it." The German government spokesperson added, "Neither the United States nor Israel consulted us before the war. Spain ruled out any participation in military operations near the strait." Italy's Deputy Prime Minister, Matteo Salvini, said, "Italy is not at war with anyone. Sending military ships to a war zone would mean entering the war." The EU formally voted against expanding its existing naval mission, Operation Aspides, which currently protects ships in the Red Sea, to include the Strait of Hormuz. Even Britain, America's closest ally, said it would not be drawn into a wider war. Trump responded by threatening, "We will remember," 2 words, a promise of consequences, directed at America's own alliance partners. And here's the thing no one is saying directly. If Trump follows through on that threat, if he treats Europe's refusal as a betrayal serious enough to trigger consequences at the NATO level, then this war will have achieved something that 70 years of Soviet pressure, 2 world wars, and decades of Russian aggression never managed to achieve. It will have fractured the Western alliance from the inside. That is not a prediction. That is a possibility that the documents and the statements made publicly this week force us to take seriously. Part 8, what comes next? Let me be honest about what we do not know. Because in a story like this, the things we do not know matter as much as the things we do. We do not know yet whether Iran will officially confirm Larijani's death. Iran has been slow to confirm the deaths of senior officials throughout this conflict. We do not know what Iran's retaliation will look like. But history tells us retaliation will come. Iran does not let the deaths of senior leaders go unanswered. The killing of Larijani, the man who was publicly running the country, is the most significant targeting event since February 28th. The response will reflect that scale. We do not know the condition of Mojtaba Khamenei. He has not appeared publicly. Every day he stays hidden, strengthens the case that the IRGC is making decisions without him, or that his condition is more serious than officially acknowledged. We do not know who among the IRGC's remaining command structure will be targeted next. The pattern of this conflict, the systematic elimination of Iran's leadership, is continuing. Each name that falls raises the question of who is next. And we do not know how long the Strait of Hormuz closure can continue before the economic damage becomes politically unbearable for multiple governments simultaneously. Here is what we do know. 18 days into this war, Iran has lost its supreme leader, its de facto operational commander, its besieged chief, most of its military leadership, and significant portions of its nuclear infrastructure. Its primary economic weapon, the Strait of Hormuz, is closed. But so is the world's oil supply, which means the pressure is building on every government simultaneously. The man who challenged Trump publicly, who told him to watch out for himself, who stood in the streets of Tehran 4 days ago and said Iran would never surrender, that man was killed in an overnight airstrike. His handwritten final note commemorating the sailors of Iran's Navy was published on his social media this morning. Whether he wrote it before the strike or his team published it after, the image is striking. The last thing Ali Larijani communicated to the world was not defiance. It was grief. Grief for the sailors who had already died in this war.